Hey, good
Uh,
morning, everyone.
Good morning.
How's everyone doing this lovely morning?
Doing great. Doing wonderful.
Good
Beautiful.
morning.
So great to have you here, Kimberly.
Wonderful
Hi,
to be
Kimberly.
here.
I'm Shar.
Hi, Shar. It's so nice to meet you. Thanks
Nice
for
to
having
meet
me.
Hi.
So thanks for having me. I'm looking
Oh,
forward to our discussion.
You're welcome. You're welcome. You look beautiful this morning.
Likewise, where are you? You look like you have trees in the reflection there.
This is a reflection off a mirror, but I am in Puerto Vallarta.
It's snowing outside my window, so I was going to say it's a lot warmer where you are.
I'm from Colorado. Are you from Colorado?
Yes, I'm in Highlands Ranch.
Yes, I'm from Green Valley Ranch, but I plan to move closer to Highlands Ranch next year.
Oh, fantastic.
Yes.
And Jules, where are you dialing in this morning?
I'm in LA, so the sunshine here. We've got palm trees, but it's no Puerto Vallarta for sure. I would love to be there sipping some cocktails, beach life, but eventually.
Yeah. I'm in Colorado as well. I mean, and we're looking forward to spring. I know Denver just got a lot of snow and we're getting ready to, we're more spring mode down where I'm at. So it's, people are getting out on their mountain bikes and hiking trails and so forth. And so it's coming into that season.
I love that about Colorado. It's just so outdoorsy. There's so many activities, and you've got mountains, but city life. It's like the best mix.
Yeah. It really is, but I do like the restaurants and things of California, and of course the beach is cool.
Yeah, we got a good food scene.
Right.
I had to run the snowblower more times this week than I was able to go out running.
Oh my gosh. Well, is that good exercise?
I'm ready for that. I'm ready for that to turn around a little bit.
Is that good exercise, Kimberly? Snowblower?
Yeah, we did. We got almost 3 feet at my house last weekend, which is unusual. I mean, it's one of the top 5 ever in the Denver metro area. So
wow.
I'm used to snow, but just not that much at once.
That's a lot.
Yeah, but I'm ready.
All right, for those that are just joining, we're just having a chat. We're going to get started at the top of the hour in about 4 more minutes. So we're just having a bit of a talk until then.
Go
anywhere.
Right. I won't go anywhere.
Yeah, so that snow blowing activity doesn't sound very fun though.
No.
I imagine, Jules, you've never touched a snowblower in your life.
No, the first time I remember I was working a job in upstate New York in the middle of winter, and out of my whole team, they give the Australian the rental car, and I'm like, I've never driven. Like, what do I do? And it was a front wheel, so I'm like putting my foot on the gas, and the wheels are spinning. I'm like, I don't know what's going on here. And there was the car, she's like, don't worry, I can take over. I'm like, oh, thank gosh, because like I'm having a panic attack over here. Like, I'm not used to it. It's so funny. It's like, when you're not used to something, you just, I like my crocodiles and my dangerous animals. What can I say?
What part of Australia? What part of Australia are you from, Jules?
I grew up in Adelaide, and then I lived in Melbourne for a couple of years as well.
And how long have you been in the States?
10 years. So yeah, I just got my US citizenship, so now I'm dual, so I can live between the two, which is
congratulations.
Yeah, congrats.
Thank you. One of you guys now.
So are you able to retain were you able to retain a dual citizenship?
Yeah. I mean, I know some countries don't, but yeah, Australia and America, because I guess they have like treaties in place, it's totally fine. So I just have to leave the US on my US passport and then fly into Australia with my Australian, and it's really easy.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Yeah, my wife is French, and so we have dual citizenship. I mean, all the kids have 2 passports and so forth, and so that's so I know that it's pretty easy to do that there as well.
You guys can pretty much live anywhere over there if you wanted to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, well, we have a lot of family over there, and so that's which has been tough during COVID, because it's been well over a year since we've been able to see any of them. So we're usually like for instance, my wife's mother, and it's been a long time. So hopefully that'll happen soon.
Are they letting people in from the States, or are they locked down still?
No, I think that they are travel is a bit complex, and so it's just and plus everybody is, just socially everybody is awkward about it. So we're trying to be as conducive as possible.
For sure.
Yeah, well, I've enjoyed remote working other than a few technology problems that I've had, but I've been able to successfully run my business for 5 months from Puerto Vallarta. And so far it's working. It's just, we're just trying to work out some of the technology kinks. And we've been growing like crazy. So it's working out pretty well.
Yeah,
Well,
technology.
you're here, so you're doing something right. We can see
Yeah,
you. So you're-
this
Oh, good.
particular isn't ideal, but thank you. I'm learning a lot. Let's just say I'm becoming more worldly.
Good for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so technology is a good, and we should have a discussion about that, is because that is part of enabling your employees. I mean, if they're remote, and we're gonna have part of that discussion today. But we are at the top of the hour, so let's go ahead and kick things off, Jules.
Yeah, let's do it. We've been having a little good chat here. So hopefully if you are tuning in or you've been on for a few minutes, hopefully you enjoyed that little conversation. And if you're just hopping on, welcome back to the People Strategies Forum. We're very excited to have you all here today. I always love seeing the same names popping up, because it's showing me that you love being consistent, and that's always great, because that's how you get ahead. Consistency is key, right? So a little bit about the People Strategies Forum. If you're new with us today, it is a mastermind of leaders dedicated to creating workplaces where people thrive, employers reward, and customers love. So that's a little bit about our mission here and what we try to achieve each and every week. And that, speaking of mission, will tie into what we're talking about today. Just to introduce myself, my name is Jules. I'm an on-camera and video coach. I have a lot of experience from the entertainment industry. So on camera is my love, it's my passion. And we have an awesome panel of hosts here as well. Now, Sumit, you'll see his picture there. He'll be joining us a little bit later. He's running a little late today, but we have Shah, who is a people strategist. She has so much experience in the world of HR, real HR expert, runs her own company. If you just heard, she's been running her business from Puerto Vallarta. So, if you need help working remotely, she's your go-to gal. And then we have Sam, who is the founder and CEO of Comp Team, and his superpowers lie in compensation programs and talent management. And so this is your panel of hosts. And throughout the session today, if you're new to us, I just want to encourage you to be really interactive. We love hearing from you, so don't be shy. Use that chat box. I'll be writing in there as well. And if you have any questions for any of our panel or our guest speaker, please put them in the chat, because I will be going through those questions and making sure we get those answered. But if you are coming to us from a different platform, maybe you're on LinkedIn, put your questions in there as well, and we'll make sure we'll get those answered after the session as well. Okay, so I don't want to take up too much time, because we've got to get on to our guest speaker today, and I'm really excited to introduce Kimberly Arnold. Now, she is a strategic advisor, she's a management consultant, leadership coach, and she helps businesses, both small and medium, with strategy, operations, and technology. So what she really does is she goes into businesses and helps them figure out their mission and their vision, and then helps to align it into employee performance. And this really ties into what Comp Team does as well, Sam, right? Because you guys have your 12 pillars. You call it the Workforce Experience Scorecard, correct?
That's right. Yes. So it's going to be a fun conversation today. Well, really love to compare notes. It'd be great.
Yeah, beautiful. And our topic for this session today is from strategy to employee performance, the importance of aligned stakeholders. So Kimberly, I'm going to let you have the floor if you've got your slides all ready to go, and welcome. We can't wait to hear what you have to share.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all for the warm introduction, and thanks for having me. Sam and I have been chatting, over the last month or two, and particularly in the environment that we've been in for the past year. We were comparing notes, just as you were just saying, Jules, about what we're seeing in the space in our different advisory roles. And at the end of the day, every consideration, it all comes back to the people, right? Whether it be internal or your customer base, finding strategies that can get us through this period. And we talk a lot about the VUCA environment. That's an acronym that we've all heard: volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And I've even heard some clients and customers talking about replacing that complexity with chaos throughout this past year. And so we're talking about alignment, and something that's been important in business strategy and execution long before the pandemic hit, but even more so now, in aligning all of the stakeholders toward whatever mission it is that you're working toward or maybe have pivoted toward.
Right. So Kimberly, let's just talk about VUCA really quick. I mean, I know this is, we've been hearing about VUCA a lot. We've talked about it a few times on the forum. And, I guess it's important to realize that this is not a new term. I mean, this came out a long time ago, right? And it's, it's been refreshed because of what we're going through now.
Absolutely. I think you're touching on the experience that I've had with it, and the perception has been because of the technology, our age of digital transformation, how quickly businesses are evolving, how fast life cycles are shifting, going from launch to growth to scaling to long-term viability, and repeating and reinventing. How many companies are coming to market, constant new competition. And so that's really been the context that I've experienced it up until COVID. And then it took on an entirely new meaning in the last year, when so many companies were disrupted, having to reinvent, having to pivot.
Right. Yeah. And it's we were just talking about this earlier in the call, because it's not just COVID, but in the fact that everybody's there's the introduction of or the forced introduction of remote work for a lot of people. And as that we've been talking with Shar, even just having internet access and computers across the world and pieces like that, as far as technology to enable the workforce, has become even more critical nowadays. So I'm glad that, I know, Kimberly, you specialize in digital enablement as well in your practice. So it's good to have your expertise here.
Yeah, and even prior to COVID, and you and I have had a conversation about how organizations that were already on that path, how differently they were really able to respond, or at least in terms of timeframes, were able to respond to some of the challenges that arose at this time last year.
Mm-hmm. Great.
So, I have 5 strategies that I will bring to the table for an organization that is feeling like they are doing their best to navigate this VUCA environment. The first one is always, to control what you can control, and that's an alignment in and of itself, to work with your team, to work with your ecosystem and your customers, to figure out what your strengths are, what your resources are, and be able to tackle your problems and your challenges by relying on what you do best. And in the digital transformation space and in technology, they talk about strategies such as microsystems and containers, where you break things down from a software perspective into small packages, and that way, if you need to make a change, you don't have to modify the entire system. And I think that mentality, even for organizations that are not tech-based, is useful. Control what you can control, break things down into little pieces, and alleviate all of the other issues and just focus there first. That's number one.
Yeah. So let's dive into this a little bit more, because I see a lot of managers get hung up on this. It's almost like the 7 stages of grief they have to go through before they realize, okay, I need to control what I can control. An example of that is just the frustration. Like, for instance, in something that we couldn't control this year is the forced movement into remote work. I mean, those knowledge workers, had to go outside and work from their home during that quarantine phase, or if they're in quarantine. And so that's something that cannot be controlled. A lot of managers got hung up on that, and they were not able to think about other things such as enablement and reprioritization and direction in that environment. So yeah, what have you seen there as far as the complications that leaders have had in that element?
I think you nailed the biggest one, and that is, those who had not already embraced these concepts of technology, remote work from home, distance learning in the educational space, and being able to find that connectivity. And again, back to the word alignment among the team when you were not all physically in one place.
Mm-hmm.
And there are just organizations that were able to embrace that, and those that really, really struggled. That's the number one thing I've seen.
I imagine is the benefit of working with you in this environment. If a leader is caught up there, you can coach them and saying, hey, this is something that we can't control. These are the things that we need to start thinking about. Is that some of the guidance you bring?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going to say that under, I'll just jump right now to number 4, the prioritize, and, using communication and collaboration to improve your operational agility, your adaptability, efficiency, scale, speed, scope, and reach. And the number one way to do that is through technology right now. And it's amazing, the sophistication of the tools and what it allows us to do in order to maximize performance in an environment like this is it's an opportunity not to be missed. There's so much out there, it's almost impossible not to be able to stay on track if those types of solutions are embraced.
So in the terms of prioritization, I mean, right now, I've worked with some clients that of course they weren't prepared, when they went into the remote work phase, and so they had to do a big shift, and then it was almost like the first thing when they were looking at technology and employee enablement is the first thing we just got to do everything at once. So they use this shotgun approach, and they didn't think of a lot of the steps that they needed to take. There was some pieces that, for instance, implementing software, you have to go through the requirements phase. You need to think about structuring it appropriately, communicating to your employees and training managers on how to use it and so forth. Is there a certain guidance you would give to organizations as far as how could they learn to prioritize better when they're coming into an event when everything seems to be needed all at once?
Right. That really, you're touching upon some other discussions we've had in terms of agile practices. And again, that's breaking down into smaller pieces, these tasks at hand, and applying specific multi-purpose teams that can address those tasks. Keep the teams small so that they are adaptable and fast. You don't want to overwhelm any type of focus area with too many people. And so I think once you do that and you are able to say, okay, we have these five challenges, and then come up with a solution for each and break that down into assignments, that's really about the challenge that people have even on the highest levels of developing strategy. I've never walked in to work with a client that they didn't have an idea in their strategic plan already. It's typically about, how do I take this down to the most day-to-day level in accomplishing what I'm trying to do day by day? And it's the same practice with prioritization and recognizing, look, these are our 5 main things. And they're usually figuring out what your challenges are. That's usually not too difficult. You're aware your cash flow is reduced. Your patrons are not able to come in. You have to set up safety protocols, those types of things that came up. Those are pretty apparent. And I think it's just making sure that you have the right people to address those issues and get on it, do it quick.
Mm-hmm. So could we dive into that a little bit deeper with a story? I know you've had some clients in the and food and beverage area that have had to make adjustments and so forth. So, is there any is there some stories or lessons learned there you can tell us about?
Sure. I had given an example of a catering company. I also actually advised a restaurant industry advisor who herself was working with an entire range of organizations. And they were all really rapidly embracing, as you mentioned, the digital technologies, the apps, standing up delivery and curbside service and ordering, those types of tools and systems. And so most came back to the technology solutions and some type of app or communication tool in order to stand that up.
Yes, I imagine so. Yeah, a lot of, and it's great to see how fast. I mean, the agile movement has definitely been tested through this entire experience. I know I'm constantly being contacted by programmers out there of apps and devices that can build certain things of me for me in my practice. And so as a business, I think it's important to understand that there's not just off the shelf solutions, but then custom solutions have been easier to build more than ever. I mean, I think a lot of these are modular, and as far as people can develop them quickly, right?
And there's so many integrations where you can even do it yourself without even knowing the code if you use the right software solutions. Microsoft has one as an example as part of their Power BI solution. So, and their Power Apps is related to it. So, I think one of the surprising things a lot of organizations have told me is that they didn't realize, they would have done it a long time ago. They didn't realize how simple it could be and how much of an impact it could have on their operations.
Well, I think that's it's a good point, just as learning from a business overall. I mean, if sometimes it takes a shock for us to re-strategize and grow. And so I have a personal piece that I go by. That's if I ever feel comfortable, then I know that I'm not doing enough to grow and pursue or move forward. So I think that's something is that we should self-reflect on a regular basis. Is do we feel like we're challenging ourselves, or are we designing something new? Are our products and services on the shelf for too long and we haven't adopted or adapted those? And I think that's important to have in a regular process. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And you're kind of touching upon another one of those strategies of, recognizing, you stabilize, you prioritize, and you recognize, and you have to identify those gaps, those pain points, not just in your own organization, but for the customers that you have. And if you want to stick to a restaurant type example, they had customers that were literally just afraid to come in or couldn't come in, right? And so you have to be able, you have your own gaps and pain points, reduced cash flow, trying to retain your labor force, right? And when they're out suddenly needing, they need pay, they may go somewhere else, and you've lost your distribution that's been disrupted. And then you want to try to stand it up and still be there for your guests, for your patrons. And so you have to figure out part of that solution. So it's as much looking internally at what the challenges are for you. And the positive of that is if you can figure out what those pain points and the gaps are for your customer base, then you can come up with innovative solutions that address those pain points, and you increase your value proposition to those individuals.
Right. And Shar, you have an example there because Shar, I know that with Rocky Mountain Health Advocates, you have locations in malls and so forth, and you needed it from a business perspective. You needed people to feel comfortable to come back in and visit your outlets, right? Or your stores.
Absolutely. So we had to go through an entire new how we brand our company. And so we used to sell just one product, but now we consider ourselves health advocates. And so as health advocates, now we have brought in our services to about 5 different primary products, as well as health advocacy services as well as bringing in key experts around health advocacy that's beyond your traditional healthcare. So dealing with the VUCA environment and all the changes that happened last year, we really had to be extremely, look at our talent management strategy and be extremely agile to adjust to the new environment and help that our communities and our clients and our employees felt comfortable coming into our locations. And that took, out of my 25 years of HR and talent management experience, it took a lot for me to overcome the challenges and realize that adaptability and flexibility was primary and key and overcome. And actually 2020 became one of our very best years and one of our most profitable years we've ever experienced.
Yeah, sure. That's the perfect example of what I was just saying, and you're in that space, it's kind of like what technology used to be. IT used to be a department, right? We don't have that anymore. Technology influences everything.
Yes.
And you could say the same thing. Now, every business, regardless of what vertical or ecosystem they are in, they're a health and wellness business.
Right.
And so those that really do provide that as your service or a product, everybody is your target now. And, to hear you say that you recognized how, even though it was difficult to do it, that you recognized that and were able to then scale your scope and your reach and your speed to respond to that need that you saw, that's brilliant. That's exactly what is supposed to happen.
Well, also from a compliancy standpoint, we really needed to understand the technologies that we needed for telehealth and for HIPAA and protecting PHI or protected health information. And so technology-wise, we really needed to realize we needed the talent to be able to come into each of our locations, particularly in the locations where we have what are called kiosks, as well as storefronts. And, we didn't really have the capabilities within the company to understand the technologies that we needed to move to the telehealth concept. So that was very vital. And that's why a majority of all of our competitors went out of business, is because they couldn't keep up with the technology, the compliancy, and working through those challenges. And Sam, you'd be surprised. I'm not the best at technology, but I also know how to find the talent, at least for our locations, to be able to overcome those challenges. And telehealth is a whole new dimension, and that is where healthcare is going.
Yeah, well, that's part of being a great leader, though, Shar. I think that leaders don't need to know everything, right? But they need to know enough to where they go out and get the expert for that particular area. And so the fact that as you can see, that's something that kept you in business where your competitors went out, is the fact that you went out and sought and got that expertise to bring it into the organization. But one other thing I wanted to bring up is that through the complexities of recognizing some of those gaps, one of the gaps that a lot of my clients have found is during the pandemic, there was a lot of people out of work, but yet few people were really looking for jobs during that time because they were afraid to go to work and so forth. And so I think that goes into your Energize area here, Kimberly. As far as attracting new people and energizing your current workforce. Would you agree?
I do agree. And, that employers are starting to fulfill a role. There's almost a comfort expectation that comes from the employer in the vein of what you were just describing. And also just, making sure that the mission of the organization, regardless of what you provide, if you're a product company, a service-based business, making sure that you are doing something bigger and beyond yourself. And that's what gets people excited, right? And part of alignment is getting people energized, getting people invested in what you do. And one of the trends that we saw, again, prior to the pandemic, but even more so in the last year, is the importance of difference making and, CSR, which is, corporate social responsibility. and
Correct.
the desire for people, they want to have a higher impact. So that's true from, you know, an employer-employee relationship about empowering people to do more just in the day-to-day. But it's also important in terms of energizing people around a higher mission and a reach where you have an impact on your overall community, ecosystem, and beyond, depending on what it is that you're trying to do.
Yeah. So
Absolutely. And that's why we rebranded ourselves to Rocky Mountain Health Advocates. And we also looked at the career mobility, that we actually had internal talent that had higher expertise in reforming healthcare.
mhm.
And so we worked really hard, and Sam Reeve and Comp Team's company also helped us in a variety of ways. But to use career mobility to identify those positions that promotes health advocacies in our communities, because some of our employees volunteer in multiple areas in the communities that relate to positive health. And it's
Mhm.
not just the holistic, I'm talking real solid healthcare. And it's been phenomenal. We've had an amazing year. So it's very important. And also it's important to grow and help your leaders understand how to grow that talent. And we are working on that this year, that our talent management strategy is how to help our leaders really take on the value system. Our values are compassion, dignity, and respect. And that goes for not only our employees, but also for our communities.
Yeah, so I think that's great, and a great example for what Kimberly was talking about. I think, Kimberly, you mentioned at the beginning, it's really understanding what the company mission and vision is, and seeing how people are aligned internally and externally of the company, and on how they can make a difference there. And so we've gone through many examples of how to do this internally, and ensuring that there's internal alignment. But as far as social responsibility, how have you seen companies reposition themselves to use to support their mission and vision externally outside the company?
Well, you know, I mean, there's countless examples, of course, just specific in the last year related to COVID. And, you know, it was as simple sometimes as a donation to a group that was helping, you know, food banks is one example that I know personally of 5 organizations that I have a relationship with that made it their business to, you know, collect food or make donations to the food banks. They sent staff, they gave them a day off to actually go and work at these food banks and help with distribution. You've seen restaurants, you know, that were struggling. They didn't have the clientele, and they stand up an entire system to go and feed healthcare workers, right? And they're sending you know, their staff and all of their resources to go out and support the frontline workers. Same with you know, police and fire and so many others who were out, you know, still, you know, doing what they had to do, even though there was such a risk. So, and then there's, you know, a major push towards sustainability. Would you mind just showing the next slide? I have some interesting data that, and this is in reference to what we were talking about, what's important to consumers in terms of how they make their decisions, and what's important to employees in terms of, you know, where they want to work. And the alignment comes from first recognizing those trends, and then how the company responds, both in terms of being a place where people want to work, as well as, you know, the providing a service that people will, or a product that people will get on board and choose that organization because of what they do in terms of their corporate social responsibility. You know, one interesting statistic, even before, you know, last year, I had been involved. I was presenting at a conference for a women's technology group, and I was talking about the issue of empowerment and expectation of emerging leaders. And I found a statistic that said that some millennials, when asked how long they were, would stay at an organization and be considered loyal. The average was between 6 and 12 months.
Wow.
So, and I'm sure you've seen in your practice, you've seen similar trends. And so if you have a mission for your business, you need to attract and keep highly effective workers who can help you, engage and achieve that strategy. And, I've seen statistics recently, 53% of workers say that having a job that can make an impact is important to their overall life's happiness. 46% said that lack of transparent leadership and communication with them is what drove them to seek new employment if they had just changed jobs within the last year. 75% of consumers will give their business to a company that supports an issue that they agree with. And there's countless other data that you can point to that says that people really care about what companies do when they are deciding if they're going to work with them and if they're going to buy from them.
Yeah, there's more choice out there than ever, right? People not only have a choice of who they purchase their goods and services from, but also who they work for. And so I think this is a great piece. We need to have more focus, more than ever, on the workforce experience and how people are aligned in the organization. Yeah,
and it's become more important even than price. People will pay more money to buy from an organization that they think is a difference maker in an area where they care about.
Yes, and if I may add, and I will not say the names, but I worked with 2 very major health care companies, and I sat at the executive table in charge of culture and talent management. And there was always confusion and disconnect with what the employees perceived of the executive team. And the employees were very careful not to tell the patients what they really thought of the company. But ultimately, I think that it affected the reputation of those 2 major health organizations, because patients felt like they couldn't trust this company because of the lack of trust between the executive team and the frontline employees. Because employees, even though they were not supposed to, but behind closed doors, were sharing things with the patients about the executive team and the lack of trust.
Yeah, and that's very important. Just like when to have that trust internally, and when we look at there's a couple models around this. As we're looking at the full cycle of company, coworker, and then your customer or your client. I call that the 3-legged stool. Those are very, very integrated. How you treat your internal employees impacts the customer experience that they have, and it determines whether that customer is going to continue to come back to that business. So it's definitely important to make sure that we treat our internal employees they have the same experiences our customers would have. So
correct.
Well, and that's this last point of maximize. We talked about stabilize, energize, recognize, and prioritize, and the maximizing comes from this idea of aligning all the stakeholders around the mission and leveraging every possible resource and contributor, and those are both internal and external resources. And the larger of an organization you are, the broader that reach, and it could be the vendors in your supply chain. Or if you're in professional services, it could be a consultant that you work with. But you realize you have to juggle. Again, that's the alignment. You have to find the value between what your organization wants to do, your relationship with your employees, your relationship with your customers and their customers, and that in and of itself is an alignment exercise that has to be revisited every single day.
So tell us a little bit more about how you help companies with this, Kimberly. How do you help with that alignment and show them what their needs are and so forth?
It's funny because I was asked a couple of weeks ago in another session like this, what people would find the most surprising, and one of the things that I thought of is that what I'm hired to do, typically, or why a client outreaches to me isn't, I would say 9 times out of 10, it's not what I end up working with them on.
Mm-hmm.
And, or at least it might be part of it, but there's always something else. There's a backstory. And they tend to all be related to alignment. And I'll give you one example. A couple of years ago, I was contacted by a professional services firm, and they were specifically looking for guidance regarding their marketing department, or at least so they thought. And I went in and I met, they had just had an executive transition. So they had, the COO was fulfilling the interim CEO role, and there was another partner. And within 15 minutes, it became very clear what the issue was, and it was alignment based. And that was that they had been in growth mode, and they had, as you see in a lot of professional services firms, associates, junior partners, partners, and there's so many decision makers. And they had about 300 internal stakeholders, I would say about half of which you would describe as a junior or an emerging leader.
Mm-hmm.
And the other half, the more senior, about to retire. And they had very different ideas about their strategy, their mission, and what they were going to do to achieve that. And, as you would expect, the younger emerging leaders were much more risk tolerant. They wanted to take on debt. They wanted to grow in every possible way, organically, vertically, horizontally, geographically. And you had others who, especially those about to retire, saying, we don't have that tolerance, so finding that balance, and getting back to the original point of why they had engaged me was, the alignment. And they thought the issue was marketing, but the reality was that the marketing department had no idea what their day-to-day direction was, because they were being told different things about even just the geographic markets
Mm-hmm.
where they're supposed to be looking. So it's just one example of how you go in and you ask strategic questions, you make observations. And the other tool that I always use is, don't just meet with the C-suite. They're going to be the ones that hire me most likely, but I make sure if I get the opportunity to come in and sit down with team members, I do so at every single level.
Yeah. So
that I can hear and see the perspectives and see if the alignment really is what the senior leadership thinks.
That's great. And I do the exact same thing. When I'm evaluating the workforce experience, I first meet with leadership and ask them, it's like, okay, what are they trying to deliver? What are they trying to deliver to their customer and the people in the company? And then they'll go through their process. And then, but you really need to meet with those employees to see if they're actually receiving that, if they actually feel that, and that message is getting across clearly. Often I find that there's always misalignment somewhere.
Well, and it's human nature to, it's okay. And I think that's in their defense, it's always easier when you come out from my perspective as a third party, and I'm not seeing what they're seeing every day. I've owned 4 businesses, and I've been the first 2 companies that I was an owner of. We were rapidly growing, diversifying. The first was an Inc. 500 company, fastest growing small business. The second went from 1 division to 8, worked all over the world. And that does happen just inherently when you're in that type of mode. But it also just helps, now that I'm in this role as an advisor, because I can come into an environment and make observations and ask certain questions that they just, you don't think about sometimes when you're in the moment.
Oh, you're on mute there, Shar.
Typical thing. Okay. May I also just mention, would you not agree that that is also important about authenticity and being transparent with your employees? Because I've worked in a company with 159,000 employees, and they had a lot of duplication of very, very major positions. So I'll pick one, process improvement departments and project managers. So every single department had their own project manager, and all the project managers were very misaligned, and they weren't aligned across the entire organization. And it really, one, it from a financial perspective is very expensive. And two, it caused mass confusion at the front line. So I would have rather that we had transparency and honesty, and without threatening the people in the positions, that we really need to pull all the project managers together and have some alignment and transparency and talk about how we can work together, better together, for the sake of the organization.
Yeah, and that does sound like, you know, the traditional model of, you know, operating in silos as opposed
Yes.
to these cross-functional teams, and you know, those are the types of communication strategies that again are enabled by today's technology, and coordinating these quick conversations amongst teams. You know, the software tools, they hold people accountable. They, you know, they are sophisticated enough, if you know, and some of them are more of an investment than smaller or mid-sized businesses want to take on at some point in time. But if you do, you know, you can have a software system and overall ecosystem in terms of the technology that, you know, you've set up your meetings, everything's recorded. So if you can't make the meeting, you can follow up on what was done. You integrate your workflow mapping about every single person and what they're doing. And you are getting email alerts if you haven't responded to somebody, and everybody else is aware. You can be using things like Slack and certain channels that allow people to be communicating quickly and allow senior leadership to see those communications. And you can set up those portals, again, in your example, Shar, of you know, an integration between all the project managers in the various roles or in the various departments, and automate that in a way using the technology instead of the silence that leads people to be frustrated and to leave.
And I'd be really interested to hear from our listeners right now if there's a certain tools that you found that are really been helpful from communication or alignment across your organization. Please share with us in the chat to see what those are, maybe Slack or a lot of those other pieces that we've discussed. So and I know that from our perspective, we're big fans when we talk about alignment and employee alignment. We're big fans of the TMA method, which aligns a person's inner drive and their ambitions with the position that they're of the company and what the company's looking for. And so it helps find the best person with the most passion and the most talent for that job. And then it also is a coaching platform for people to create alignment and give them the skills and so forth. So we have Abdallah on here, and he's saying that he likes money.com, which we use money.com internally. And I find that is a great tool. It's very helpful. And I know you mentioned Kimberly's Slack as well. And I've struggled to get on Slack myself and to use that. But what are the tools that you're seeing a lot with your clients that are very effective in employee communication and alignment?
Yeah, I have also been familiar with Monday. I utilize Slack and Microsoft Teams are the primary. It just depends on the organization and their function. There's just too many to even mention. And you know, you even start to see these contact relationship management, these CRM tools, stand out to be, you know, much more than, it's not just contact database, as you know, like a Salesforce is another common that everybody's using, and it starts to reach out. And if it doesn't have that system, it has an integration where you can tie that back into, you know, something to track your workflows and your calendars and your communication back to project teams and so your whiteboards, that if you are using that type of approach. So you know, there's so many, even just for agile, you know, the automated whiteboards, you could, if you do a search, you could find 50 of them that are and they can, my suggestion to clients isn't always, I don't represent any one technology solution. I just always encourage them, if you're picking out one, look at the integrations and see what else you can pair it with. So if you need to get to the point of a payment system or anything else that you want to layer on, just look for things that are as compatible with everything else as much as possible. And if you are on the cloud, all of the major providers, AWS, GCP, which is Google Cloud Platform, Azure, which is Microsoft, if you're in those environments, all of those solutions can be very quickly tapped into and related.
Excellent advice, and fantastic. I also see a few other ones on the chat. So if anybody wants to look at the chat, there's also some great ideas to help with that type of communication and technology.
Right.
Yeah. So Kimberly, I know let's switch gears a little bit here. I know that we have just a few more minutes as we're approaching the top of the hour. I'd like to hear about this other model that you have here. Could you explain a little bit what we're looking at here?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, I guess, in sort of wrapping it up, when we talk about stakeholder alignment, to verify first what those definitions are, and that, the stakeholders, everyone impacting or impacted. And again, that's the C-suite, that's the management team, that's your employees, your clients, your entire ecosystem, your vendors, everybody. And, as far as alignment, to me, that means every single contributor understands the strategy, their role in achieving it, and at a level that's appropriate to them. And what do I mean by that? I think about quantifying people in terms of how much control they have and how much engagement you have. And you could really describe that, at the top, you would think the leaders, and these are the people who are responsible for directing and championing and making the decisions about the organization. They have the highest control, the highest engagement. And then you also have influencers whose primary responsibility is to encourage, to energize, and to motivate. And they make that contribution, less control, but higher engagement. And you have your sponsors who are about maybe your funders, appraising, supporting, and investing. And in most cases, that gives them a lot of control, but not as much engagement. They tend to not be as involved day to day. Sometimes the sponsors and influencers would swap places in terms of how much engagement they have, but generally it's kind of how we're looking at it here. And then finally, and I don't mean, it's certainly not the least important, last but not least, is your implementers. And these are your frontline people. These are the ones that, when it comes to alignment, you have to engage them, you have to incite them to produce, and perhaps, most importantly, if they're the kind of people you want to keep, the alignment helps them stay. That helps with retention. And so what each person needs in terms of the messaging that they get about the company, the strategy, and their role in achieving it, those are really just broad parameters of what the responsibilities and the needs are in each of those buckets, if you will.
I'm really happy to hear you talking about the control that a particular person has over certain metrics or goals and so forth. In my practice, I use that a lot when we're looking at creating metrics for a particular pay plan for individuals. We call it line of sight, so that the ability for somebody to really make a difference on that particular metric or that particular goal is quite critical. A lot of companies, they come out and they think, oh, we're trying to do this to the workplace and we're trying to accomplish this in the environment for our customer, and that concept is for some people in the company is tough. They don't understand the path to get there, right? And I think that's what you were mentioning earlier, is to break down the steps so that people can see the path, understand what they can influence and make an impact.
Absolutely. And that's, that's what it goes beyond buy-in. It's, alignment isn't being told what you're going to do and people doing it. That's not alignment. That's, that's just, kind of orders and follow through.
Mm-hmm.
The goal is to inspire investment, not financially per se. Well, sometimes yes, but just to have the people who are part of your group be really invested in what it is that you're trying to do. And especially when that happens, it does help the employees get through certain responsibilities and activities that they have to do that perhaps are tedious or monotonous and not as easy to get through. Because if they're doing that and they understand that it's part of something that's more important, that will make a difference, 2 months down the road, 3 months down the road, that's an easier pill to swallow than just going through the motions of something that you don't understand why it is that you're doing it to begin with.
Great. And then one other point I think that is really critical in what you're talking about is I mentioned that it's good to break things down into bite-sized chunks, line of sight, and so forth, which I definitely do believe is important. But we need to come full circle, right? Because we started off this conversation talking about clarity of mission and vision and having those guiding principles that the entire company should know about, so that they can operate with and know what to do in their context. If we don't know what direction we're pointing to and what we're trying to achieve as a large goal, it's difficult for us to make decisions in our own paradigm and make those correct decisions to ensure that we're aligned in that similar direction.
I've actually worked with organizations. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Shar. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to mention it's also extremely vital to understand your talent, because in each of those roles in the cadre that you just mentioned, that there's amazing talent that could really, like, who are your influencers in the company? And oftentimes the senior leaders really don't know until you really understand who they are. So I think it's very important to take the time and the investment to really get to know who your people are and see where they fit. Right.
Totally agree. Well, we are approaching the top of the hour, so I want to talk a little bit about our sponsor. Jules, we
just had a little question here from Abdallah. If I can just jump in and ask it real fast for him.
Sure.
So I think the model is interesting because I see a nice categorization with no hierarchy in place. An implementer is just as important as a leader, and so on. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Absolutely. They do tend to have less control and decision making in the hierarchy of the business. But if these are the people that are working directly, especially with your vendors, with your providers, and particularly your customers, that's why I was saying it's critical to, help them and give them the information that they need to properly engage and produce and to stay. Because if they're doing, what they're supposed to be doing, they're helping you achieve that mission. And particularly those, if they're client facing, it's absolutely critical. And the bigger that you get as an organization, the more important every single member, every single stakeholder matters. I did see a comment in the chat too about, you're not always going to see everybody, but the all hands is another, I keep going back to the agile practices, but the all hands is a way for a very quick, maybe 15-minute meeting, 30-minute meeting. And I have them with nonprofits that I work with and with clients. And it's a way for them to hear from leadership. The communications are in the chat. You can't have 150 people on a Zoom and give everybody a voice. It just doesn't work. But you can hear from senior leadership. You can tell them, this is what we accomplished this week. This is what we're working on. And it's just nice that, and the bigger the group, the more important it is to have that tie straight to the C-suite or to the CEO and let them hear. Remind them what you're doing, what it's all about, And then amongst the teams individually, those small cross-functional teams, be doing that all the time, and find ways to communicate across all of those, and use the technology to do it. I think that's really important.
Thank you, Kimberly.
Love that. All right, Sam, I'll let you get back to the sponsor.
Yeah.
Right now, we don't have any questions, but if anyone does have any last minute questions for Kimberly, please pop them in the chat so we can get them answered before we wrap up.
Okay, so I did mention the TMA method earlier, and we were huge fans of the TMA method, and it does help with employee alignment, as we were talking about. And if you'd like to learn a little bit more about that, we're offering through this presentation a free assessment. And so basically, you can sign up for this, and I'll launch a poll right now so we can sign up for if you're interested in learning more about this tool. But the great thing about the TMA is it's a communication tool that helps you have better discussions and get to know your people a lot better. And so from a personal aspect, you can take this assessment and you can learn about a little bit more about what drives you and the power of those drives and what you're most talented in. And as you have your other team members take this as well, you can have discussions around this and learn how to coach on and develop people towards the passions that they have, whether they want to aspire to a certain job position or grow in their career. It's a great tool to help with that particular alignment. Jules, could you go ahead and tell us about our next week's speaker?
Yeah, absolutely. So next week, hopefully you will jump back on here and join us again, because we're going to have Dina Samuels, and the topic will be conversations about race in the workplace. So we'll be diving into things like diversity and inclusion, which, that's a very hot topic right now, something that's being addressed everywhere. So she'll be hopping in same time next week. So hopefully you will join us for that.
Great. Yes, I think it's a real timely topic, given what's going on in the world today, and especially the recent news in the United States. So please join us for this discussion with Dina Samuels. We've had her a few times as a guest on the forum, and she is a wealth of knowledge and very impactful in what she does.
And also there's plenty of recordings that you can find on social media. So you can also, and as well as Kant Team, where you can hear these recordings if you can't seem to hit during the time that it's playing.
Well, I want to, do we have any more questions, Jules, to take before we're at a few more minutes?
No, I think we got everything answered for everyone. I'm loving, Abdallah, you are just like so interactive today. I'm seeing everything you're writing. I'm just trying to monitor everything, but I see you and I appreciate your interaction and participation.
Yeah, I know.
I was reading it as well. I was reading it as well.
Yeah, I agree.
We want you to feel like you're part of a community here. We don't want it to feel like we're just talking at you, and we want you to feel part of it, because community is also a very, very big thing here.
Yes, I know Abdallah. He is a TMA expert. So he, as far as talent management and so forth, he is definitely a person to go to, and so it's great to have him on this the webinar. I'd love to have him as a speaker one of these days. He's wonderful.
I had to throw that in there. I'm like, maybe we could get you as a speaker.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Well, I want to give a special thank you to Kimberly. Kimberly, where can people learn a little bit more about you and your practice?
You could go to my website, which is escalatesolutions.com. And you can also find me on Twitter at Escalate Advisor, SOR, not the ER version. So Escalate Advisor.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been a wonderful discussion. And
I learned a lot. Thank you.
Likewise. Great interactive discussion. And I really appreciate you having me, and happy to help you out anytime, and learn more about you as well, so that my clients are going to have a need for the services that you provide, and it's great to learn more about what you're doing, and I think you're just doing great with sharing all this information with your customer base. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Kimberly.
And this was wonderful, and I think we all got so much out of it. So thank you for being here, showing up, giving us your energy, and I've already put in the website and the Twitter. So they're the two main places for people to find you.
Yep, that's the easiest way to track me down, I think.
Beautiful.
And we also share on Facebook Live and many other social platforms as well.
I will, and I've been sharing on my various channels about this, and I will certainly continue to do so. So, thank you.
Wonderful.
All right, everybody, stay safe and healthy, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you.
Take care.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.